It is Rich Paul's take that the Lakers are not real contenders. And he would know, right? After all, he is LeBron's agent. So, you also have to assume that it's not just Rich Paul's take that the Lakers aren't real contenders. It's Team LeBron's take.
Jim Rome doesn't usually waste his breath on NBA gossip unless there's something rotten in the room, and this time, he didn't miss. When Rich Paul, LeBron James' longtime agent, came out publicly and said the Lakers aren't real contenders, that wasn't just an opinion, that was a message. And if you understand how Clutch Sports operates, you know messages like that don't come out by accident.
Like, I personally don't think the Lakers are good enough to be contenders right now. Not right now.
So let me ask you this. When Rich Paul says the Lakers aren't contenders, is that his opinion? Or is that LeBron hiding behind his agent again? Sound off in the comments because this is bigger than basketball.
I mean, if Rich Paul knows that much about basketball tactics, knows more than Farmer JJ, then shouldn't he be the head coach of the Lakers? Yo, Rich, why didn't LeBag pick you instead of Farmer JJ to be his wine-sipping X's and O's podcast partner?
Now, let's be honest. Rich Paul doesn't speak unless LeBron allows him to speak. That's how this relationship has always worked. Rich Paul didn't become one of the most powerful agents in sports because of X's and O's knowledge or coaching expertise. He became powerful because he represents LeBron James. That's the job. Protect LeBron, push LeBron's narratives, apply pressure when LeBron wants pressure applied. So when Rich Paul goes on his podcast and says the Lakers aren't good enough to contend, you don't need a translator. That's LeBron talking through a puppet.
And if you think the Lake Show is a legitimate contender this season for an NBA championship, you would also be wrong. Sorry, Laker fan. Hate to be that wet blanket. Hate to be the cooler. Hate to be the one to dump a bunch of cold water all over you. Hate to suck the joy out of this season, but your Lakers are nothing but a bunch of frauds.
Jim Rome immediately picked up on that, and he didn't sugarcoat it. He called it what it was. If LeBron's agent is publicly dumping on the Lakers while they're having one of their more stable stretches in years, then something deeper is going on. Rome pointed out the obvious contradiction. The Lakers are winning games, the standings don't say fraud, and yet LeBron's camp is already laying the groundwork for excuses. That's not accidental, that's strategic.
Don't take that from me, because it's not even my take. I don't even believe that. However, it is Rich Paul's take that the Lakers are not real contenders. And he would know, right? After all, he is LeBron's agent. So, you also have to assume that it's not just Rich Paul's take that the Lakers aren't real contenders. It's Team LeBron's take. And if it's Team LeBron's take, safe to assume it is LeBag's take.
And Rome was right to question why an agent is suddenly breaking down championship contention like he's a head coach. Since when did Rich Paul become some master of playoff rotations, defensive schemes, and postseason matchups? If he knows so much about why the Lakers can't win, why isn't he on the bench drawing up plays? Why isn't he replacing JJ Redick, the same coach LeBron wanted in the first place? That's the part that exposes the whole thing as nonsense.
If you don't feel that way, you might want to check your agent, because he's going on his pod and he's saying it in broad daylight. You might want to make it clear to everybody that your agent does not speak for you or through you. Because right now the obvious assumption is everybody is making just the opposite assumption, that your agent is doing your talking for you.
This isn't about basketball analysis. This is about control. For the first time in LeBron's Lakers tenure, the organization isn't fully bending the knee. Luka gets the extension. Austin Reaves is lined up to get paid. JJ Redick is starting to coach like an actual coach instead of a podcast buddy. And suddenly, Rich Paul is out here telling everyone the Lakers' style of play is easy to defend. That's not critique, that's a shot.
Like, I personally don't think the Lakers are good enough to be contenders right now. Not right now.
When you say contenders, what do you mean?
I don't think they have enough to get to the Western Conference Final. I don't think they have enough to really contend from that perspective.
Jim Rome called it exactly that, a not-so-veiled attack on the coaching staff and the direction of the team. And here's the key part people keep missing. If LeBron truly disagreed with Rich Paul, he would have shut it down immediately. One sentence, one tweet, one post-game quote saying, "My agent doesn't speak for me." But that never came. Silence instead. And silence in this case is confirmation.
Like, scoreboard, don't look at it. Standings, don't look up at them. You're thinking about this all wrong. What you should be asking yourself is this: does the team revolve around LeBron? And since the answer is now no, they obviously are not good enough. They suck. They have no chance. I mean, easy lava Paul.
Because LeBron knows better than anyone how optics work. He knows if he comes out and criticizes the Lakers directly, social media will eat him alive. He knows he can't openly say the roster isn't good enough while also chasing stats, milestones, and legacy points. So what does he do? He sends Rich Paul. Let the agent take the heat. Let Clutch Sports push the narrative. And if it blows back, LeBron can pretend he had nothing to do with it.
Team LeBag is at it again, and they're getting baggier by the moment. And it's only going to get worse now that Lava Paul has his own podcast to launder LeBag's bullcrap through. Like, some of us are smart enough to see through that garbage. In fact, I'd like to believe that most of us are. Garbage. I'd like to believe that most people can see how transparently petty and ridiculous and unprofessional this all is. And that wasn't even all he said. As an example, he also said they would lose in the playoffs because their, quote, style of play will be very easy to defend, end of quote. Clearly a not-so-veiled shot at JJ Redick.
That's why Jim Rome labeled it unprofessional. You don't publicly undermine the team your client plays for unless there's an agenda. And that agenda is simple. If the Lakers fail, the excuse is already loaded. If they win, LeBron gets credit for overcoming a non-contender. Heads he wins, tails the organization loses.
But since Farmer JJ is on board with building around Luka, Farmer JJ is now the bad guy who won't win in the playoffs because his style was so easy to defend. Well, terrible head coach choice by your client then, Lava Paul. Like, I didn't know agents were so well versed in X's and O's like this. I mean, if Rich Paul knows that much about basketball tactics, knows more than Farmer JJ, then shouldn't he be the head coach of the Lakers?
Rome also pointed out how ridiculous it sounds to hear Rich Paul act like the season is already over. Cancel the games. Shut it down. The agent says they're not good enough, so why bother? And that sarcasm cuts because it exposes how arrogant this whole thing is. As if one man's camp gets to decide when a franchise is legit and when it's not. And let's talk about defense, because that's the crutch everyone leans on. Yes, the Lakers have defensive issues. No one denies that. Luka, Reaves, and LeBron on the floor together isn't exactly a lockdown unit. But here's the hypocrisy. LeBron doesn't care about defense unless it benefits his narrative. He hasn't played consistent defense in years, yet suddenly the team's defensive flaws are the reason they can't contend. That's rich. Jim Rome's larger point was about power. This is what happens when a superstar loses leverage. Years ago, this conversation wouldn't exist. Rich Paul wouldn't dare suggest the Lakers weren't contenders because LeBron ran the show. He got the trades he wanted. He got Westbrook. He got AD. He got the coach. He even got his son into the league. That power is slipping, and this is what pushback looks like. So now, instead of dictating moves, LeBron is positioning himself as a victim of circumstances. The organization didn't do enough. The style isn't right. The roster isn't built to win. Sound familiar? It's the same playbook we've seen at the end of every LeBron era. Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland again, now Los Angeles. Jim Rome wasn't buying it, and neither should anyone else. He made it clear that if Rich Paul's words are truly independent, then LeBron should say so. But he won't, because they're not independent. They're coordinated. That's how Clutch Sports operates. Narrative first, accountability never. And the timing couldn't be more obvious. Contract talks stalled. Extensions handed out to everyone except LeBron. JJ Redick coaching with autonomy. Luka becoming the face of the franchise. Suddenly, Rich Paul is on a podcast torching the team's championship hopes. That's not coincidence. That's leverage warfare. Rome also touched on how disrespectful this is to Lakers fans. While the team is trying to build something sustainable, LeBron's camp is already hinting at abandonment, preparing the ground for "they failed me" headlines. That's not leadership, that's self-preservation. And let's not ignore the irony. Rich Paul criticizing the Lakers' style of play when that style was influenced by LeBron himself. Who wanted JJ Redick? Who shaped the offensive philosophy? Who demanded certain personnel fits? You can't architect the house and then complain about the foundation. At the end of the day, Jim Rome didn't just go off on Rich Paul. He exposed the entire operation. The puppet strings, the narrative laundering, the strategic silence from LeBron, and the growing reality that the Lakers are moving on, with or without him. This feels like the final chapter. One last season of passive-aggressive messaging. One last round of excuses loaded in advance. Because when this ends, LeBron doesn't want the blame. He never does. So when Rich Paul says the Lakers aren't contenders, believe him. Not because it's true, but because it tells you exactly where LeBron's head is. Already gone. Already distancing himself. Already setting the stage. Jim Rome saw through it. A lot of fans see through it. The only question left is whether the Lakers finally stand on business and let this era end instead of bending over backwards one more time. Because one thing is clear. When an agent is doing this much talking, it's because the star doesn't want to say it himself. And that tells you everything you need to know. At this point, it's impossible to ignore the pattern. Every time LeBron James feels his control slipping, the messaging changes. The tone shifts. The excuses start getting planted early. What Rich Paul said didn't come out of nowhere, and it didn't happen in a vacuum. This is how Team LeBron operates when the spotlight starts pointing in directions they can't fully control anymore. The Lakers are no longer revolving around LeBron, and that's the real issue here. Luka is the future. Austin Reaves is about to get paid. JJ Redick is being allowed to coach without checking in with a podcast first. And for the first time in years, LeBron isn't the final decision maker in the building. That loss of power explains everything you're hearing right now. Rich Paul going public isn't about honesty or analysis, it's about leverage. It's about reminding the organization, the fans, and the media that LeBron can still disrupt the narrative if he wants to. If things go wrong, the excuse is already locked in. If things go right, LeBron can still take credit for overcoming a flawed roster. Either way, the escape hatch is wide open. And let's be real, if this was 5 or 10 years ago, none of this would be happening. There would be no podcast criticism, no public doubt, no agent questioning the team's legitimacy. That alone tells you everything about where LeBron stands in the Lakers' hierarchy today. This isn't confidence. This is insecurity dressed up as analysis. Jim Rome didn't just call out Rich Paul, he exposed the entire play. Agents don't talk like this unless they're sent. Narratives don't get pushed unless they're approved. And silence from LeBron right now isn't accidental. It's strategic, because saying nothing allows the message to stand without him having to own it. The bigger question is how long the Lakers tolerate it. How many times does this franchise allow its momentum to be hijacked by one player's personal agenda? At some point, standing on business means letting go, even if the name on the jersey is one of the biggest in basketball history. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Rich Paul was speaking for himself, or was this LeBron James sending a message through his agent? Is this the beginning of the end for LeBron in LA, or just another clutch sports power play? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed because this situation is only getting messier from here.